Welcome on into Chatterbox Debates. How about that new name I just made at the top of my head? Chatterbox Debates. Listen, we're going to debate a topic that everybody wants to debate. And to be quite honest, this debate is going to continue until we reach the end of September. It's never going to stop, and people are only going to talk about it when the Reds lose games. They're not going to talk about it. They're not going to debate it when we win. But when the Cincinnati Reds lose a baseball game, this is the first topic of discussion always. I'd argue it should never be, but for the Cincinnati Reds fan base, they certainly love to throw the proverbial goose under the bus. And this goose, the golden goose we're going to be talking about today, is David Bell. David Bell has been the manager for the Reds since 2019. During that stretch, that's 6 seasons roughly, 6 seasons exactly, David Bell has had 0 winning records through the first 40 games of any season he's managed. 0. I'd argue in half of those seasons, the team hasn't been very good. I'd say the starting pitching has been bad, the bullpen's been bad, and most of the lineup through most of those seasons have not been good. Now, over the past 3 years, probably since 2020, you could make a significant argument, at least in, 3 of those seasons, that, the lineup has been good for a majority of the season. But this year, you come in with all these expectations, you come off a 12-game winning streak, you come off some of the most exciting hype that you've had around your ball club in seemingly 15 years. You show up this season and it's a dud. I'm on the firm belief that a manager in baseball is not what it once was. The role of that manager is not what it was 25 years ago. Every decision they make is based on numbers. It's based on analytics. Take a good look at the Tampa Bay Rays. Take a good look at just about any team in Major League Baseball. Even the guys like Bruce Bochy, Joe Madden, they still use analytics. Now, they don't use it as much maybe as some teams, the Skip Schumachers, the David Bells of the world, but they still are using analytics heavily. The Reds are no different. David Bell is, I hate to use this word, but he's a puppet. He is a puppet that has all of his decisions made predetermined. Now, the decisions that those computers can make, they can only do so much when half the roster is hurt or suspended due to steroid use. There's only so much David Bell can do. David Bell is trying to put a Band-Aid on the Titanic. It hit an iceberg, the ship is split in half, and he's literally trying to put a Band-Aid on it. You can't do it. It's impossible. And you can point back to what I just said, how every season through the first 40 games of his 6-year tenure as Reds manager has been bad. Sub 500 in every single year. You can make that argument, and I'll listen to it. I'm not even saying don't fire David Bell. You can fire him. Fire David Bell. Bring Freddie Benavides up. He can manage the team, and we'll see if something changes. But I know nothing's going to change. I know it for a fact, because every decision that guy's going to make is based on the same things that David Bell was using. I know it for a fact. And you can make the argument, well, why not shake things up? Shake things up to what? If I got a bag of garbage and I shake it up, it's still garbage. Nothing changes. David Bell, again, I'm not going to sit here and say he's the world's best manager. I'm not going to say he's a top 15 manager, though he is an all-star manager. I'm just saying nothing's going to change if you fire David Bell midseason. What I want to get into with my good friends Jacob and Reid is, do you look to fire him after the season? Is that when we start to look at things? How many wins is it going to take this season to maybe you do fire him midseason? It's such a disaster that you just Nick Kroll in the front office, the Castellinis, they need a scapegoat. So I'll go around right now. The Reds are currently sitting at 19-28, 9 games under 500 after starting 4 games above 500 through the first 24 games. How many wins this season would it take, Jacob, for David Bell to seriously be considered to be fired?
I think you're talking somewhere in the 60s. I know that might sound like a crazy low number for some people that want David Bell gone already, but you're missing Matt McClain, who's the unquestioned leader of this team. You have Noel Marte, who was second in Rookie of the Year odds for his steroid incident. TJ Friedl obviously hasn't played much for the team. I mean, the team has 2 hitters with an OPS above league average. The team batting average is .217. How much of that is a manager? How much of that is just the players not being good enough at the plate? And, the starting pitching is playing out of his mind. So everyone that wants to beat up on David Bell for how bad the bats are, we should give him credit for the starting pitching being top 5 in the league. So you can't pick and choose your battles with the manager. I think the issue that the Reds have right now isn't with the manager, it's with the roster.
Correct. And that's the biggest part of it all is you think you have one thing coming into a season. You have a lineup filled with depth everywhere. You sign Jeimer Candelario to a positional group that's filled out +4, +5, 3 extra guys, 4 extra guys. You lose Noelvi Marte due to a stupid decision to use steroids. Matt McClain's hurt. You go throughout the season, CES stinks, and he's hurt. We're losing guys left and right. The depth is non-existent at this point. You take a look at the outfield. Jacob Hurtubise is up. Connor Capel's up. We started the year with Bubba Thompson, who I have to reiterate, he was sent down not to AAA, to AA. We rostered a AA baseball player for the first 17, 20 games of this season. It's outrageous. And we're going to sit here and say David Bell's responsible for every injury that's happened? Reid's on the opposite side of me when he comes to the manager doesn't matter. And I do have the belief that most managers in Major League Baseball, they don't matter today. You can pick and choose. Skip Schumacher, David Bell, whatever clowns running the A's. Doesn't matter who you have out there. They're going to win the same amount of games with that roster than somebody else would have. I firmly believe it. And you can say, let's look at this. Let's look at the silly mistakes you make on the base path. If you don't try to steal 3 bases, the offense isn't going to be able to hit them in. If you can't steal second and steal third, nobody's getting a hit to advance that runner. Nobody. That's why you have to do that. Now, if you want to point at the defense is one area of discussion where I'll be like, okay, there is really no excuse for the defense to be that bad. But is it the manager's job, and this is where I'll ask Reid, is it the manager's job to teach a starting shortstop in professional baseball to catch a pop-up?
No. But I have 2 questions.
Sure.
for both you guys, because I think you're both in the camp that maybe not extend Bell, but what's it going to matter? If managers don't matter, then why do you care if they fire him or not?
I don't. That's the part of this.
Okay, so why not? If we're trying to salvage the season and we're throwing paper wads at the back of the bathroom wall and seeing what sticks, why not fire him and see if you can get it? 2 years ago, the Philadelphia Phillies had a much more accomplished manager in Joe Girardi. Guess what? They were playing much better baseball. Fired him, got him out of town. What'd they do the rest of that year? They went to the World Series. I'm just saying, if you're having desperation, if you're having no hope, why not try something? And if it's what you consider to be, hey, it doesn't matter, managers don't matter, then why not just fire him and see if you can spark someone else can go in there in that clubhouse and not get thrown out half the games and actually can be there for the 9th inning, unlike David Bell. Because David Bell gets thrown out, once every series?
He tries to.
He holds it all in at those press conferences. He tries his best Bill Belichick, then explodes on him.
He tries to.
So, just try something. And then here's the second thing. If we are going to give David Bell credit last year, which we did, and it was rightfully so, right? He's winning all these games with all these young players, all these injuries. Luke Dreamweaver's given up a 40 spot, and they're still winning. Then why can't I criticize him when they're not playing well? If you get credit for when their things go well, and David Bell would get credit if they won 90 games, went to the NLCS as he should, then I'm allowed giving him credit, or I'm allowed being a point of contention when this team's 10 games under 500 in the middle of May. And I get injuries. I get it. A lot of teams have injuries, maybe more, maybe not so to the extent that the Reds have them. But they always have injuries. Every team does. No one plays a healthy 162. I just want the excuses to be thrown out the window.
The excuse is that this isn't you talk about Joe Girardi. This is the lineup the day he was fired. Kyle Schwarber, Rhys Hoskins, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, JT Realmuto, Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott. That's the lineup Girardi was working with. If you want to say David Bell had those guys and this wasn't working, fire him to the sun. Get rid of them. Toss them away. We have the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of our lineup.
Okay.
Jonathan India, sub 200 hitter, almost. You have Santiago Espinal, sub 200 hitter, almost. Some guy named Jacob Hurtubise, You have some guy named Luke Maley, who, again, is hitting 120. He's hitting 120. This isn't the all-star lineup that the Phillies had when Giardi was fired.
That's fair. No, that's fair. The one constant, the teams, the players, this is the third iteration of the Cincinnati Reds since David Bell has become the manager, right? There was the team when he first got, and then they get that team with Castellanos, Winker, Eugenio Suarez, who, that was a pretty good lineup, no? That was a pretty good lineup. Still hasn't made the postseason. Still hasn't made the postseason. They've given this guy a bunch of different rosters to compete and maybe kind of been competitive, but no one's ever feared the Cincinnati Reds. No one's ever looked at the Reds and said, oh, this is a team to be reckoned with.
I'm going to say this right now. If David Bell gets this roster, this lineup that we're working with, if he gets this to a postseason, seems unlikely now. If he does, that 3-year extension last year, triple it. 9-year extension, because it would be a miracle by the grace of God, is the only way this lineup has a chance to hit and perform on a consistent basis.
So then the manager would matter.
No, I'm not saying it does.
So why extend him?
Because at that point, I don't care. He's winning. At that point, he's taken a miraculous turn and changed the shape of history with this terrible lineup.
So once again, we're giving David Bell credit for the good things and not giving him criticism for the bad things.
Maybe that's what it is. But I have a hard time believing that's the truth. Because I still blame David Bell. I blame David Bell for not playing Tyler Stevenson more. I blame David Bell for some of the silly base running mistakes that there are made constantly with the Cincinnati Reds. But I have a hard time believing if we had an all-star lineup right now, David Bell's job would not be in question. That's at least my opinion.
I would definitely agree with that. I think my main pushback to firing David Bell mid-season is Freddie Benavides. Like, we've seen what he's done in
Correct.
a couple games here and there when David Bell's been out. I know that's not the normal, standard managerial role, so he's not comfortable in it, but maybe that changes if he's the full-time manager. But he has not done well.
And that's
in the windows.
Correct. And that's why I say if you're going to make this decision, if you're going to say, hey, David Bell, you haven't started well over the past 6 seasons, you really haven't had any postseason success whatsoever after this season, then you fire him. That's when you get rid of him.
That I disagree with. I would either fire him soon.
You would fire him mid-season.
I wouldn't fire him after the season because either right now is bad enough that it costs him his job, or it's injuries and he has nothing he can do about it, and whatever, you have to wash the year. I don't think the Reds are going to go 62 and 100. That's a different story. I think the Reds are going to be out of playoff contention in a couple games below 500, and we're going to look back at this year with a whole lot of what-ifs about if this team would have been healthy to start, and we're going to go into next year with very similar expectations to when we were in January, February, and March of this year. I think it's going to be the exact same thing, and I think David Bell is going to be at the helm. But I think the best chance to re-energize this team,
right,
make a little run right now, is firing David Bell, because like you said, you can't replace Mike Ford, Connor Capel, Hurtubise, India, Espinal. You can't replace 5 guys in a 9-man lineup. You can switch your manager and cross your fingers and pray that it jolts the team in the side of the arm and guys aren't hitting 215 anymore. Whether that's David Bell's fault or not, a change might garner some improvement that people want.
And here's the final point that I'll say. You said, what's going to happen? You're gonna bring up Freddie Benavides to be the manager if you fire David Bell? I've got 3 options for you. I got 3 options for you
Please.
if you fire David Bell. Option number 1, already winner in this town, Zach Taylor. He manages the team for the rest of the year. Option number 2, you go to noted leader Jonathan India. You go to noted leader Jonathan India and say, hey, I have a new role for you. You're going to be the manager, and you're going to be our starting second baseman. Or option number 3, if managers, as you say, do not matter whatsoever, why not put Gapper in the role?
That sounds good. Listen, that debate was very good up until the very last second when we were talking about Gapper taking the job of manager of a baseball team. My point is, fire him, don't fire him. The results that you seek will not come from the manager. There's about 10 different problems with this team. I would say the last one has to do with David Bell. That's all my point is. That's been Chatterbox Debates. Listen, in the comments, would you fire David? Or would you want Gapper taking over the managerial role? Let me know in the comments. Chatterbox Debates, we out.